This is Safe. Today I'm gonna talk about very cool stuff in React that came out in the version 16.8, which calls React hooks. Um, First of all, I'm gonna walk you through some slides to talk about two features. One of them is React hooks, and the other one is React effects. Let's start with React hooks. So hooks let you use React's features without classes. As one of my friends say, don't add too much cream to your tacos. What are the hooks first? When we say hooks in React, what do we mean by that? It is a way to add React component features to functional component features like state, lifecycle. We know in React code, when we write the React code, we usually extend the React component. And when we do this extension, we get some features out of the box without thinking about it. Now, think about some simple components where you don't want to extend or inherit all the features in the React component. Um, like you can write a simple function and use the state and the life cycle from the React component without extending them. This is something that Facebook came up with to make these functions light and like micro. So you can, write the minimum code to do whatever you want to do. Let's look at the code. What does the syntax looks like? It is as easy as this, one line. As you can see here, we define account and we give it the function that will take care of it and update it. And on the other side of the assignment, we use something called use state and we give it this number. This number actually is the initialization of the count. And how you gonna call this function? You just on a click, for example, one of these methods, set count, count plus one. And every time you click this function or you click this button, the set count will be called and the state will be maintained. So the use state gives us two variables, and we can, as we saw in that piece of code, the first variable is the value, similar to this, the state, and the second variable is the function to update that value, similar to set state function. So the final part of the use state is the argument that we are passing is the initialization for that value. So what's wrong with the classes? Let's say classes are not going away. They're still gonna be there, but by allowing classes to be converted into smaller function component, we can even further break out parts of the application into smaller and more focused component, not heavy component. And we can look at this example if you want to define multiple state hooks, as you can see here. For example, there's a count. It's like a variable that has one value, and we assign set count function to maintain it. For example, here we have an array. We are initializing this products array by this value, and here, for example, we have an object coupon object, and we maintain that by set coupon, and we are passing it null value. For now, we're gonna stop here. We're gonna move to the code. You can see the code. First, for example, all you need to when you write your example, make sure you update the React component to 16.8 and above. Also React DOM, and I also recognize that there's a new version of React script, so it doesn't have to update that too. And don't forget to run npm install, because I was like writing my code and I was like, oh, what's going on? There's an issue happening. But then I recognized that, oh, I need to update to run the npm install to make sure that I'm having all the packages I need locally. Let's look at this example here. We have apps.js file. And this app.js file, we have this function is called increment count. This is the like original way of set the state. As you can see here, this is the old syntax. We use the set state in this function because we are extending the component here. And in this example, as you can see, we set the state. This is the variable that we need to set, and this is syntax or syntax of set state. Now let's run this code and see what's going on here. npm start. So, and I promise you the UI I wrote is the most terrible UI that you will ever seen ever. So this is the application I wrote. As you can see, there's like eye component, mouth component, nose component, and we're just trying to make the idea look simple. So if we look at the functions here, we have this function called this increment component. And this function here, as you can see, is just the normal function that we are writing in JavaScript. But we are attaching this function to the set state. So if we go here to this one and increment the component, and you can see the number will be maintained, and the state of this component will be maintained. So what's new here? As you can see here, we imported something called hooks counter, and I'm going to show you what the hooks counter looks here. If you look at this example, it's as simple as possible here. We define the function. We didn't extend the component here. We just created this function called use effect, and we imported from React. As you can see here, it is just simple syntax here. And here on the unclick, we call set count equal +1, and then we're gonna print something there. So as you can see here, we don't do the increment here, we do it inside this function. Let's look at the code here, and this is the function that's taking care of it. It's called count to the moon function. So here we're gonna look at the inspect, and we just look at the console here, and we're gonna refresh the page. So hooks counter was called, and here I'm gonna come here. As you can see, hooks counter was called, and the counter will be incremented, as you can see here. So here, that's how we maintain the state of this component easily without extending the React component, and without worrying about that. We just use this syntax, use effect, and we will pass it a function. And I'm gonna talk about that more in the next presentation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that was helpful.